Well, hello, and welcome to New Mommy at 40 podcast, where we hold space for those entering or currently in parenthood at an seasoned stage of life, their 40s. I'm your host, Victoria. Whether you're new here or visiting us again, thank you for stopping by. Come on in, put up your feet and enjoy being in the company of someone who gets you and the amazing and exhausting journey you've taken on. While you wait for our guest today, click on that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss a future episode. Right now. Oh, and follow us at New Mommy at 40 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. All right, here we go. It didn't happen in my 20s. Who cares? Now I've got all this fancy wisdom to share. Hey, I've got this baby, you're getting the best of me, 'cause I'm a new mommy at 40. Not on the wall. Great. Today our guest is Sarah Farrow, my college friend who is a talented and accomplished singer, a valued executive administrator of a great company, a loving, supportive mama of twins, ages 11 and a 4-year-old, who just so happens to be a proud lesbian. She'll walk us through her experience of becoming a mom over 10 years ago and doing it all over again in her 40s. We'll talk about her desire to be a mom, going through the patriarchal and ignorant aspects of the medical industry to become a mom, and how she's navigating motherhood now while co-parenting and newly single. Make sure you listen to it all because you don't want to miss a fun and new segment that I'm introducing with this episode, the Gen X test, to see if Sarah gets to keep her Gen X culture card. But before we get into it, please hit that follow or subscribe button to make sure you don't miss a future episode of this podcast. Okay, let's go ahead and welcome Sarah to our chat. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
I'm so happy that you agreed to do this with me. You know, I've thought of you early on when I was coming up with this podcast, and I was too shy to ask outright. And then I put something on, it's true, I put it on Facebook and you responded. I was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah. So Sarah and I, as I said in the intro, we go back a long time. It's almost like over a 20-year friendship now. Sorry, did you not want me to mention?
No. Is it 20 or more? I don't know.
It might be more. No, I said over 20 because we went to college together. We were babies when we met. And now we're both moms, and it's just so awesome to see you and your family grow. So it was really important for me to get the perspective of a family of a same-sex couple, because, you know, I think sometimes, and especially in our age range too, let me add that, because we already know, for most of us, if you're hetero and you're trying to have a kid, and you have infertility issues, right? Or single and trying to do this on your own, that's hard. And that's hard. But then also when you add the component of same-sex coupling and going through that process of having a child, then legally proving that that child is yours. I mean, there are just so many layers in the situation that it was very important for me to get the perspective of someone who's gone through it. And for you, you have 3 kids. So when you had, and how old are the twins?
They're 11 today.
Yay.
Oh yes.
So
quite appropriate.
So you have a very interesting story in going through this years ago for your set of twins, and going through this recently. So tell us, what was the process like for you with the twins? And at the time you were in a relationship, so you and your partner went through this together. So what was that like?
Yeah. So my partner at the time, we were married. So we did it the old-fashioned way. Love, marriage, big carriage. So we were married in 2009, and then we pretty much just hit the ground running and started the fertility process right away. And the twins were born in 2011. So that gives you the span. So 2009 to 2011 was the time it took us to have them. And we pretty much, 2 women, 2 uteruses, 2 seemingly capable bodies to carry a baby or make a baby. And we knew that we'd have to find a donor and, so we kind of, brainstormed on all that sort of issue. Would we use somebody we knew or a bank and that sort of stuff? But one of the things that we did discuss was, would we take turns? How important was it to have a baby that was genetically ours? And did we each want to have a genetic child? And how many kids would we end up having? So these are all those things that you kind of talk about right away. But one thing we just did know for a fact was that we wanted a family. I mean, there was just no question. And that's really what brought us together in the first place. And so my partner was 8 years older than me. So I was 29 when we met. She was 38. So no question at all that I had plenty of time to work with. So I was very gung-ho to support her to have this child. She had some medical issues and it just seemed like it was a no-brainer that if we had an opportunity for me to carry, I would. But the genetic part was that she'd love to try to have children genetically hers. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to Columbia in New York City and did our research. And
That's Columbia University, right? Or
Columbia University, yeah. Columbia Women's Reproductive Center.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know. I feel like in '09, from a fertility standpoint, it was reasonably advanced, not necessarily with same-sex couples. So I think I will say that having said that, we were actually, and this seems like counterintuitive, we were able to use that to our advantage. We got in based on the unknown factor. So it was sort of like being guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
So we came in with this idea of, hey, what if we do this? So we came in with this idea, and not to say that we're the first people that did it, is, partner 38 going on 39. Obviously, there's something that they call the egg donor program where you have a surrogate. Sometimes heterosexual couples do this where they use someone else's eggs for a heterosexual couple if the female's eggs aren't viable. So we basically replicated that. And so just
so some understanding at the time that was that like a beautiful new idea? Like that wasn't something that was necessarily offered to you at the time?
No, it was kind of just sort of like a meeting of the minds between like our care coordinator, through my partner, just this idea of how do we sort of fuse our, it's sort of like this idea of two women together making a family. And
Mm-hmm.
how do two women share the experience?
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of, maybe it's a little foo-foo sounding where there was research, I think, in Germany about like taking the mitochondria of an egg, putting it with another egg and making it, fertilizing it with sperm. So therefore the eggs were fertilized together so two women could actually make a baby. So we were very interested in those types of, advances. So we were thinking along those lines, like how can two women actually create life together?
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that thought process, we were excited at the idea that I could possibly carry her eggs in my body, would be two women making as close to making a baby together as possible and
Right.
sharing that experience. So that was exciting to us. And so it just wasn't, so it was in line from it was, and it lined up with like an insurance, where like you call it the egg donor put us in the egg donor program where I was carrying eggs for her. We were able to go through IVF and it was, and then it just miraculously was covered in that way because then she
Wow.
qualified for medical reasons. I had to carry her eggs and it was just miracles.
Now, were you able to state to these medical professionals that you were a couple in order for that to happen? Or did you have to basically work the system and make it seem as if she was basically, or you were basically having this baby on your own with an egg donor?
Yeah. So there were ways, things such as, like I said, they had to put in the fact that medically couldn't carry. So I was caring for her. So whether they put us in as a couple or not,
Didn't matter.
probably not.
Right.
And just jumping ahead, the child I have who's 4, I left a doctor's office because he caters only to same-sex families. And because he caters only to same-sex families, I was denied everything.
Interesting.
Because
Because you were having this child basically on your own at that time.
Because there's no way to prove infertility when you're either single or in a same-sex relationship. So that's so by sort of skirting the same-sex topic, you are more likely to be covered, and there is something very wrong with that.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah. And so here we are making advances as far as being accustomed to same-sex support and walking into an office and saying, hey, we're a same-sex couple, we would like to be, acknowledged. Of course they're going to acknowledge it because it's more commonplace. But that doesn't mean then you're going to get the financial support, or are you going to be covered? And so that I'm not necessarily involved in that now because I'm done having children. But if I were to continue in this, I would definitely look for ways to reform that, because the more common it is and the more insurance knows that same-sex families are having children, I fear that families are having to pay more out of pocket.
Yeah.
It was different in the past, the less they knew about it.
Right. So
that's what we found.
It's very interesting that you went from basically not disclosing too much at the time to now full disclosure, and you still have these issues that come up depending on what you do. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we basically, we were able to do an IVF. But what also made the process cool for us is that a woman who's doing IVF, and I know you've spoken of it too, is it's not an easy process from the suppressing to then the enhancing. Well, for her and I, we split it. So we did suppressing on my end and enhancing on her end because I carried and she donated. Essentially. So so that was pretty awesome. I mean, it was obviously not easy, and obviously fertility isn't easy, and it was painful, and we did have one miscarriage along the way, and but we ended up having the twins. We did so in 2011 they were born, and so we definitely experienced, one of the things was, so she was 40 by the time they were born. So she was 41 when they were born. So she was of that age, and I, it just was a great balance because I was younger, birthing them, bouncing back, taking care of them. She worked in the city and I stayed home, and then, changed jobs. So I was able to, we moved out to the suburbs once I had them, and they've been raised ever since out here in Connecticut.
So I have a question in terms of, when both of you going basically through parts of the treatment at the same time, that must have been really difficult, just hormonally.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I was a mess by myself.
That's a good point. Yeah.
How was that? Was that difficult?
Yeah. I mean, my portion, I'd have to say that was the toughest part for the toughest process of the pregnancy part. Was that for her. So as you know, so like suppressing it for me, I had the shots and certain hormones to like hold on to the pregnancy once I was implanted. Hers definitely required a lot more, the hormones were a lot heavier to then enhance stimulate
so the ovulation process.
So and she was doing it, I think, in the middle of the summer, the final time. And she was a producer for, she worked in the city, and she was doing stuff. And I just remember stories of her being on set and just being like dripping and swollen, and her legs were just puffed up because that's where she was doing the shots. And then she'd have to go off set and do the shots and things. And then obviously the belly getting really swollen when they had to take the eggs and stuff. But it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, but then I had to carry the twins for, almost 9 months. And, so we would go back and forth like
But it's beautiful
but
that you were able to share. I mean, you truly did share that experience.
well, that's the point.
You really
Exactly.
did.
And there was nothing more beautiful than that. And like I said to you earlier, um, early on in those years, it was less common. There was a huge culture shock for us to move from the city because we moved to a town that we thought was, affluent, but also a commuter town. So we didn't think twice about like any stigmatized, reaction to having a same sex couple or having children. And it was just more like, oh, cute babies. Who's the mom?
Right.
It wasn't like nasty. It was just like matter of fact, like who's the mom? And we just would get so offended by that question because we just, but we always would love to say we both are.
Right.
And, obviously we both were, but no, we really both were. Like we just loved, giving that answer because we like legitimately both were. And what's called the gestational mother, which was me, scientifically gestational mother. And then she's the biological mother.
And then you shared that even with that shared experience, you still basically had to adopt. Your partner had to adopt
that, yeah. And
the
that
babies in order
never,
for that to be a legal
yeah,
situation. That's
that
so
will
bizarre.
never make sense to us. That will never
Wow.
make sense to us. There's something about like the birth certificate. So what happens when you birth a child in the hospital? The birth certificate is issued,
Mm-hmm.
and that birth certificate goes to the woman who birthed that baby in the hospital. So I think a woman, if she's going to give her baby for adoption or anything, same thing. And there's that grace period before someone can adopt a child. So me being the mother birthing the child, automatically that child is mine on that birth certificate. So no matter who gave me those eggs, those babies were mine by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so my partner had to adopt in court
Wow.
legally. Yeah.
And
And it
how,
wasn't something she could do that day.
right.
So God forbid something happened, not to say that we were at any type of odds, but you know, pack up the car and drive cross country with the you know what I mean?
Right.
Like she's sitting there knowing that legally those aren't her babies until we went to court to actually get them,
That's an
get them
emotional
in writing
process.
to the
And
person.
how long after did that process start and how long did it take? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, luckily, I mean, you work with the right lawyers. They know that it's a ridiculous law that it just shouldn't exist. And I'm really bad at it because it's not anything that we had to like follow up on once it was done.
Oh,
But I,
good.
I don't know if the law's been changed. And it could be a very state specific law. But we did work with a great lawyer who was able to get it moved along pretty fast. But if you're in New York City, you're dealing with a much bigger court system, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very formal. Luckily, we were in a much smaller system. But they also, the formality, if you've ever adopted, it requires home visits, and it could be like, they could just show up at your house anytime they want, and that kind of thing. When someone like us, when we're actually a family and then we got married and we chose to do this, and then to get a home visit where you're taking notes on us and that kind of thing seems kind of kind of ridiculous, but
No, it is.
yeah, yeah.
It's thank you for going through that again for us and our friends listening, just to understand that these kids are wanted,
Yeah.
and you went out
Yeah.
through a lot to have them. And
Right.
I just think it's very good to highlight that. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you too, did back then, because I haven't recently gone through the IVF treatment myself.
Hmm.
My particular fertility specialists do not support necessarily multiple eggs being transferred. So
Hmm.
for you at that time, since the twins was a while ago, did you
Hmm.
put more, was more than one embryo
Hmm.
transferred?
Oh, okay. So I'm so glad you asked that. So, I do know because of the 4-year-old I have. it has changed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told that only recently has it been advised or
advised. That's
know.
the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yes, it's
Yeah,
been advised.
I don't know if it's a legal thing, but single embryo transfers only. I don't know if Octomom ruined it for everybody or what happened.
It's her fault.
But in 2009, when we started the process, there were no parameters. So what happened was our first attempt. So we did 2 rounds of IVF. So the first round of IVF, we put in 2, and one took, and we carried to like 12 weeks, and then we had a miscarriage. And then the second time we had, we had the eggs and we fertilized, and this time we waited as long as we could till they were
they used to do day 3, and then it became day 5 as to waiting to see how the blastocysts are coming along.
The blastocyst stage. So this time they really wanted us, and this is a quick little story I'll tell. So this was the second time of IVF. We had then they were going to wait this time as long as possible. So they wanted the 5 or 6 day for us. And we were in our apartment in the city. And the night before we were supposed to go in to do the transfer, they basically called, and this was supposed to be the next day was probably going to be day 6. And at day 5, they literally said to us, it is not looking good, but we'll call you in the morning. Okay. So if you think the day before that you're supposed to do the implant and you're giving us a warning, it's not looking good, that's pretty much letting us know, don't get your hopes up. Right. And we've been waiting. As you know, you get a call like every day to kind of say how it's going. And basically that night we just threw the towel in. And we knew that when we got that call, we didn't expect to get good news in the morning. So that night, we pretty much were just like, I think we almost like broke up that night. I mean, it was just like, we can you imagine? Yeah. And it's different with IVF too, because of the hormones you're on and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we I remember we went like down the street to, pigged out on we were a mess. And then we get a phone call in the morning at 7 in the morning from Columbia. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, what? Hello, waiting for that call. And they're like, oh, hi, this is Columbia calling. We have embryos to implant. I go, wait, what? Huh? I go, what are you talking about? Yeah, come in. Now I will, well, wait, how many? He goes, and he just a second. 3. We have 3. Wait, what? 3? You said it wasn't looking good.
Right.
So now you had 3 good embryos. So here we went from last time we put in 2, only one took, and then it was a miscarriage, to then, so you're wrestling with probabilities and what to do, and you just thought maybe you didn't have any. So basically what happened was we get there and we're like, put them all in, just put them all in. And Dr. Sauer was his name, and he's this renowned, fertility specialist, is in, supporting that. So we literally put all 3 embryos in, because we're like, worst case scenario, I mean, yeah, obviously we could have triplets, but come on, really? Right. I doubt it. And I'm like, I'm okay with twins. If it happens, it happens. And so, yeah, so we put all 3 in, and that's what we did. And we just risked it. And then I will say there are numbers that you get when you find out if you're pregnant or not. There are these certain levels. And then as that happened, I was getting very high numbers.
The HCG levels, probably. Yeah.
Yes. HCG, right? Yeah. And it was so high. And I'm like, holy shit.
It's
don't be triplets. Don't be triplets. Please don't be triplets. And then finally, you start to get the cramping, all this kind of stuff. And I was coming home. I was at work and I called her and I was like, we got to go to the hospital. It's either cramping from a miscarriage. I was like, it could be anything. And then when they did the ultrasound, they basically, this is funny. They start doing the ultrasound and she sees all 3. And I about fell off the stretcher. But what's interesting is that only 2 had heartbeats. I say that as a testament to my miracle uterus, because that means that the embryo still attached.
Yeah.
So it ended up all attaching, just only 2 developed into the babies I have now. But the 3rd ended up sticking anyway. And anyhow,
So there
I
could have
get it.
been some chromosomal,
Yeah, or just
abnormality or something. But that's a very
but
positive way to look at it.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
they
yeah.
all
But
stuck.
I have my
Yeah.
4-year-old, so he's the third that was,
Right.
meant to be here. But yeah, I totally get it now. I just think that the money that goes into it, the just I it's such a hard decision to make when some companies who give you insurance and all, and you only get maybe sometimes IVF benefits, it's just once a year
Mm-hmm.
you can do.
Or
And
maybe once
so
a lifetime. I mean,
once a
for
lifetime.
one of
So I
my
can see.
yeah, because in
Yeah.
my situation, one of my because I'm insured by myself or through myself, and then I'm self-insured, I should say, and then
Yeah.
I'm under my husband's benefits, and under my insurance, it's one time, lifetime wise,
Oh gosh, yeah.
and with his, it's three times in a lifetime. So just how different, like, and I can just say the name of an insurance company but that doesn't necessarily mean that you and I have the same plans, even if we,
Exactly. It's
and
job specific, it's
yeah,
everything.
and
And I can
especially,
tell you, yeah, and I learned that the this last time around.
mhm, it's
Which
very,
yeah.
it's very
Hmm.
interesting. And then I found out too, for me, it was kind of like do it now or don't do it, because I was doing some research, and I realized that there are some insurance companies, thankfully not ours, but some, once you get to 44, they won't even cover you for your own eggs. They only will cover if you use an egg donor. The
Wow.
patriarchy of it all, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
so that, it's, yeah,
Or
insurance,
egg freezing
egg
too. They won't pay
freezing,
for egg freezing at a certain age. Yeah.
yeah. In the process of parenting, um, co-parenting along the years, even when you were together,
Yeah.
what were the biggest challenges that you faced as a same-sex couple when it came to your children and raising your children?
Definitely the roles, without a doubt. So much because like I didn't, by sort of, I guess you could say I've rose my hand like wholeheartedly to carry because I knew I always wanted that experience to carry. I never thought for a second that I wouldn't. As a female, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
carrying children in my belly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether or not I was with a man or a woman, it didn't make a difference to me. Did that put me in that position though to be sort of the female versus, and then be with a woman who then played the male role and that sort of thing? I don't know. I think it just confused things a little, um, to where I played that role, and that it allowed her to then further be in this like, oh, I'm taking the train, I'm going into the city, I'm playing the role of
The
the
provider.
working, the provider. But I was never a stay-at-home mom. I was always working. I when we met, I worked and I continued to work when I had the kids. So it was a matter of juggling that role that I took on as the person that carried the babies and breastfed and like took them to childcare and did all that because I changed jobs to work in Connecticut to be closer to them, but it didn't mean I didn't work.
Right.
So there was no other way. It was like, it wasn't that it wasn't about like resentment of that. It was the only way. That was what the options were.
Right.
But
But
I
it's
just,
funny to you that society, they're in a same-sex coupling. Ironically, there were some societal norms that somehow got applied in your
yeah,
relationship that I'm sure you weren't expecting when you for that to
yeah.
just happen when it, you know.
Well, what was weird to me is that before we had kids, we were very similar. Like we had similar jobs. Our jobs were very close to each other in the city. We'd take the train home together. We would cook together, watch the shows together. Like we were on the same schedule and just more in sync.
Mm-hmm.
And then once like I stayed in Connecticut and then she would go in, she'd come back and then she'd plug in. Um, it just threw it all off, and we stopped doing things in sync. And but understandably, because because of the
Right.
kids and things. And it just felt more like roles and like more of a divide and conquer as opposed to like doing things as a team. Well, we were a team always, but
No, I
like
get what you're
the
saying because, it's just basically the circumstantial.
yeah,
It was circumstantial how the roles ended up being
it
assigned.
was circumstantial, but it was so like heteronormative.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And then, but it was heteronormative with a twist of like the female sensibility too. So then there were the perks of it.
Right. Right.
Like she still like was a woman and we still connected on a like two women level and like had there was still something very unique about our relationship that wasn't like your typical so like so there were still obviously the aspects of two women that is not the same as a man and woman. So I don't want to say that it's
Yeah,
exactly the same.
and not that every, hetero coupling is that way, but again, it's just in the
Exactly. Yeah.
societal expectations and stereotypes
Yeah.
basically of. And so and in your coupling, it just means what you're saying is that there were two maternal individuals
Yeah.
who all of a sudden found themselves due to circumstances in these heteronormative roles, but which I'm sure also felt a little odd for you because you basically changed more so than she had to in terms of your life
Yeah.
schedule and just normal happenings, because now you were not a stay-at-home, but you were kind of like the mom, quote unquote, role, and I'm sure there were sacrifices that came with
Yeah.
that.
Total sacrifices. And you know what, as you're saying that out loud, I'm also thinking that it not necessarily is of our doing, but it could also be people around us because it's how other people saw us. So if people saw me coming into work and then saying, okay, got to go pick up my kids, they're going to treat me a certain way. If people saw her going into work, coming in on the train, her saying, oh, Sarah's got the kids, or oh, I'm going off on this trip because of work and Sarah's got the kids, she's going to be treated a different way because that's what we've set up for our family. And people know that, oh, so then she kind of falls into that role like
Right.
the provider falls into.
Right.
And Sarah
Right.
falls into the role as, so those are just the roles that we adapted to. The other thing that I'll say that I struggled with, but this is what we do because we think it's the best thing for our children, is this like suburban lifestyle. And for me, I greatly like loved like New York City. Like I truly believe there was a way to make it work. But it looking back, no, obviously. Like
Right.
push would have come to shove
But you weren't
eventually.
ready to leave the city life. That was also part of your identity at that point too.
Identity wise, I wish there was a way as a gay woman to make the city work. I wish there was a way to merge the diversity and the flavor and the color and the culture, everything that that I had in the city to live a comfortable, authentic life, but have the comforts of the suburbs.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to find. And believe me, around '09, that's also what we were looking for. So you would look at like oh Maplewood, New Jersey is the Brooklyn of New Jersey,
Yeah.
or where can we go and afford where we can still maintain sort of that like not hip, you know what I mean? But
No,
like
it's okay
that
to
sort
say
of
hip.
city
That was
lifestyle.
Yeah, that lifestyle. And
Yeah.
but it seemed like, from the outside looking in, it seemed like you eventually found your community though of other moms or other parents that were same-sex
Yeah.
coupling.
I think
Kind of,
so. I
right?
think it was just tricky in the beginning because I had my own hangups and my own like stereotypes of people that I met here. So I looked at them a certain way. Oh, well, they're driving a Range Rover. They're not going to like me, or and so I judged them maybe.
Right.
And so I've learned over the years, you find your people. You
Yeah.
find your people eventually. And I think the tough part as well is for the longest time we would bring our city friends here So it was all about trying to attract our city friends. A lot of times we were trying to actually recruit our city friends and be like, move here. But then I learned, like, no, embrace the community that exists already here,
Right.
and have it work in our favor. So and it's actually funny is that a lot of us, obviously, that, with quarantine and COVID, I'd learned more to embrace Connecticut than never before, just because
Well,
here we
everyone else from
are.
the city was moving too.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone was leaving the city
You
anyway.
just did it
So
earlier.
it kind of grew on me.
Yeah.
And
You just-
I'm pretty good with it. I think it's been a really we've started a whole like pride like committee for the town, and we started a first pride rally, and the schools are doing some really amazing things with pride as well. And it's been really exciting, and I'm just really proud to have been raising my kids here. And there's so many great families and community, and you know what, and again, we're like an hour from the city, and the kids know the city, and
yeah, you
and we're there.
mentioned when we were getting ready for this that you take them to the city every chance you
Oh, whether
get,
they like
right?
it or not. I mean, it's like they'll complain sometimes, and they're like, the funniest thing is they have this idea that everybody smokes in the city. It's the weirdest thing. They're like, everyone smokes in the city. I was like, I guess so. That's their like takeaway.
That is hilarious that of all things that they that they take from the city is like a lot of smokers here.
Yeah. They're such anti-smokers, but that's actually a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
When you got home from delivering these two amazing little beings, what was that like when you went home and you went from being a family of 2 to 4?
Right. Well, we were a family of 3 because we had a little Yorkie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
You already were dog moms.
Right, we were dog moms. But I was accused of sort of neglecting the dog once we got home with the with the twins, which was somewhat true. Which is, it's all relative, I suppose. But the twins, yeah, it was a rude awakening, because obviously you're in the hospital and you have all the care in the world around the clock, and then you're home and it's like, bam, here, they're yours. Yeah, it wasn't easy. The one thing is obviously you want to do everything that your mom did or that you think you're supposed to do, which is breastfeeding. So for me anyway. And I was like, of course I'm going to breastfeed, and I'm going to do it at the same time, and they're going to be fed. So that was probably, aside from like trying to get them to sleep through the night and try to feel like, we had, normal sense of, sleeping around the clock, which that doesn't happen with anybody, was the breastfeeding. So they did the best they could with us at the hospital. They gave us a pump, and, it takes a few days to kind of like have the letdown and all that of the milk. But what happened was we struggled. That was probably the most stressful part of having twins, because you have 2 babies to feed, and not just one. And that's their nutrition. That's their life. That feeds them. And I guess I had this impression that that's how they eat, and we're going to save all this money on formula, and it's going to be amazing. I mean, here we were thinking cloth diapers. I mean, you think all this stuff, when it's your first time, but that it didn't go that way. So I learned a lot about how we produce milk as women, and, size does not matter, ladies, when it comes to making milk. I am a size, I guess, D in breast, but I do not produce what you would think. I guess it has to do with your number of milk ducts that you have inside, and we are born with what we have. And so when I was producing milk, I just was not producing enough milk to feed 2 newborn babies. And so I felt very shortchanged. I felt horrible as a mother that I couldn't feed my babies. And I felt really deficient, literally and figuratively. So we went to a new parents kind of group at the pediatricians, And we got some really great advice from a lactation specialist who said it's quality over quantity with breast milk. And so basically think of breast milk as like vitamins. Think of it as a nutritional boost. So what it has in it is the nutrients to fill them. It's not so much like filler to make them feel full, but it's basically, it's got the goods.
Right.
So don't feel ashamed. So basically pick out a formula, you know, that you like, and supplement it with the breast milk. So that's what we did. And so basically I would take, because what was happening is I would put them on the breast and they basically would just, you know, like a pacifier, basically just sit there all night. And then they would cry and be hungry. And so it was like, well, that wasn't fun for me. So basically what we did was that I would just get the pump and I would pump and whatever I could get out. And then I would add it to the formula as like a boost, basically. And then they would drink it and that would be their meal. So it was a relief knowing that they were getting the nutrients of the breast milk and getting full at the same time. So we found our formula that we liked. We picked this one called Babies Only that we loved, and that's how they fed. And so but I lived on the pump. That was the thing. So it took away from sort of the bonding that you would hope you would get from the breastfeeding, but I could still do it like on a moment's notice. I could still do the breastfeeding when I needed. But so that was the thing. That was the tricky part about having twins, I'd say. We actually ended up with really good sleepers. I don't want to brag, but we had amazing sleepers. We joked that on Mother's Day, so the kids were born March 31st. So Mother's Day, March, I guess, 10th or 12th. We actually, this is how we tag teamed it. So we basically decided that we would just take turns with sleep. So as twin moms, we would, as opposed to both of us being under, like sleep deprived.
Yeah, and being zombies.
Just take night on, night off.
Yeah.
So in the room, we, one person would take them. But what happened was we were supposed to have them fed every, I guess, 4 hours, they would say. And what was happening was they were sleeping through their feedings. And neither one of us were telling each other because we were like, I didn't wake them up. Well, I didn't wake them up because we thought, okay, we're starving our kids. But truth be told, if they're sleeping, then they're sleeping. That means they're not hungry to wake up. And then Mother's Day, I think, was a day that we realized they slept through the whole night. And they were only 3 months. So we couldn't believe it. So we had like champion sleepers. And to this day at 11, it's still a problem. There's still champion sleepers. Yeah, honey.
I need water.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just grab them water.
No problem.
Okay. So speaking of champion sleepers, they sleep in, and then I get up and do stuff, and then they're like, okay, now feed me. Do all these things for me.
What's your favorite thing about the twins?
They're definitely silly. They're not serious. They definitely don't take life too seriously. And I love that about them. They see the world definitely as it is. They're realistic. They definitely, there's like a maturity to them, but they also know how to be kids.
That's nice.
And I think also with them, they have like you can put them in a room with like grown-ups and they'll fit right in and be like, they'll like at any, and they'll be in a room with like little kids and they'll be able to just like play and be on the floor and do all that. I think they just like fit in any scenario. They're just really comfortable, with who they are in any scenario. So, they're just the kind of kids you can take anywhere.
That's awesome. They sound very balanced.
Yeah. I don't know why, but they.
Well, they have two great parents, right?
Yeah,
they have two great moms.
I'm happy for that. I've never had to like force them to do anything. They're definitely great kids. So. Yeah.
Well, it's important, to have this conversation because it sounds like a normal household, right? And there's so much going on in the world right now, especially in states like Florida that are really trying to silence the the normalcy of just families and respect all kinds of families. So it's nice to hear. Sounds like a regular family to me, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, they were just talking about that yesterday too, and just,
It's a
how to
weird
even
time.
wrap my head around it. We had it's funny you mentioned it because even here we were planning our own, our first Pride Day, to not this year but last year. And even, even we struggle with it here. I mean, it's not it's made the news in Florida because it's a legislative conversation, but but even just in other towns, people wrestle with what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. I mean, everyone has different values in their
Absolutely.
homes, but and people want to be sensitive, and even us, we do, as an LGBT family, we want to be sensitive to other families, and but we're not looking to write anything into legislation to tell other people either. But we had an instance where we were told, that people weren't comfortable using LGBT in a day of celebration in the elementary school level, and so we had to call it something more quote unquote family friendly, called UBU Day.
Hmm.
And which I actually am okay with. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it was all inclusive. It
It sounds
created a
like an
more
inclusive title.
it was a very inclusive
Yeah.
title, and it didn't need to be specific for elementary students.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a problem with that at all. It didn't say don't say gay. It just was, let's just all celebrate all of our differences.
Well, that's the thing.
What
It's like if the conversation is had and if there's an actual willingness to see uh, this side of a family that's LGBTQ,
Yeah, we can
then you
include it.
can, if you have a conversation, then you can come up with things like this where it can still be inclusive of everything, which is one of your passions in diversity uh, and
Hmm.
equality and inclusion is
Yep.
that
Hmm.
it's about a conversation. You have to be open to actually come
Hmm.
up with something as a community that will fit
Hmm.
everyone's needs.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
just read yesterday that a gay teacher is resigning because she's uncomfortable to teach in the school district, because does that mean, if she speaks of herself or something, I mean, it's
yeah, where it wasn't worth
horrible.
losing her career over.
Hmm. Yeah.
To change the tone just a little bit because I want to get into, because just to establish this clearly, when you had the twins, you were in your early 30s. Your
Hmm.
partner at the time, your wife at the time, was in her about to turn 40.
So she was already, so
She
by the
was
time we had the twins, she was 41.
she was 41. And
Hmm.
then years later now,
Hmm.
you start hearing the tick 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 of the
Yeah.
clock. So but before we go that, I'm trying a new segment out on
Hmm.
my guests, and you're going to be the first one.
Okay.
Okay, and this is just to establish our Generation X membership. So are you ready to
Okay.
play?
Sure.
Okay. Easy questions. Debbie Gibson or Tiffany?
Oh, Debbie Gibson.
New Kids or New Edition?
New kids, new kids.
Oh, Mad
Yeah.
TV or In Living Color?
Oh, in living color.
Boom.
Yeah.
Molly Ringwald or Winona Ryder?
Winona or Winona. Winona.
Is
Yeah.
it
Hmm.
Winona?
Winona. I
I
think
don't
it's
know. We're not
Winona.
friends. She'll be all right. Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder or Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet?
Oh, probably Johnny and Winona. Yeah.
See, it's got to be Lenny for me. I just always
Yeah, I
wanted to
know.
be a fly in the wall of those two.
I know. I know.
Um,
I know.
Ferris Bueller or Breakfast Club?
Oh, Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, me too. Okay, and now the
Mhm.
last question. It's a tricky one. To make a Polaroid pic develop, do you shake it or blow on it?
Shake it.
Boom!
Shake it like
Definitely.
a Polaroid picture.
De-
Yeah, that's a good one.
definitely Gen X. Definitely.
Great questions.
So
Great questions.
now, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So now we can get into your
Mm-hmm.
your clock ticking.
Okay.
When did you find yourself thinking, "Oh my goodness, I now have an opportunity to be a mom with my own eggs
Mm-hmm.
and the time, when did that come to your heart and your mind of,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I think we have one more that we'd like
Mm-hmm.
to meet, one more child. And
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, lucky enough, I was young enough when I had the twins that it wasn't anything, there was no hurry
mhm,
to think like that. I pretty much had the bulk of my 30s to be a mom to the twins and enjoy and not even think or rush. And I guess maybe the fact that my partner was older and we had the twins and you know fertility was what it was. We had so many friends that were older, having children, and the reassurance that it wasn't like, oh, you got to do it now, you got to get in there and have your children at 30. And so my 30s were really nice. I mean, I just we not nice in the sense of raising twins and
mhm,
but I feel like also, I thought, well, it would be really nice to know what it's like just to have one child, instead of having two at the same time. But four, maybe, I think, when the kids turned four, I was probably thinking, I guess how old was I then? Probably 35, 36. And I thought, you know what? I should probably start, thinking about it, my body, like, I know that when we were preparing for the twins, like she had done a lot of like diets and vitamins and a lot of things just to prepare. I know like abstaining from alcohol, a lot of
mhm,
like things just to detox the body when it comes to fertility is super important. So I was thinking about things like that. And obviously the conversation between us as a couple, because I think we kind of got used to our lives just as they were with just two. And it's not wrong to think that maybe this would just be it,
mhm,
and this is a life. And, she is older than me. And so was she ready then to like start again?
mhm,
And we hadn't really been talking about it, like, okay, remember I still want that child and I still want that child. So it required some like deep soul searching too, therapy and talking and really just deciding whether or not this was something that we still wanted. But it definitely was, and it was kind of to me a no-brainer in the sense that again, we started our relationship way back when in '07 with the notion that we wanted a family. And, one, I'm an only child. And, two, I had lost my mother, at an early age. And, and I just, I'm very, very close to the idea that we were here on this earth to, whether or not gay, straight, however it may be, to procreate and to
mhm,
have family and to create that legacy. And also as an only child, I mean, one thing I will say is like I watch these kids every single day in awe to see the fact that like the experience that they're having like right now is something I never had. Like just right now they're communicating and engaging and relating to each other. Um that's something that they're learning from and gaining from, and just communication skills alone. Like,
mhm,
you know, um, not to say that my life was so sad and gloom and doom, but just to have that experience of having siblings and growing up together. It's really, really beautiful. And so they have each other, the twins, and they always have that. But yeah, so it was time to prepare. And so I think that financially though, I mean that's just like and I'm not going to take a second mortgage out on the house though. I mean, it's
right,
like, yes, it was important,
right,
obviously,
right,
but to some extent. And so at the time I was working and had a great job and insurance, but am I going to get as lucky as I did the first time around? What we did the first time, what are the options? Um, the donor we use, that's the question. The donor we use for the twins, are we going to use the same donor? Do we have, the ability, am I going to do IVF? I don't want to end up with twins again,
Right.
Do I have insurance to pay? Do I want to do IVF? Or if I do IUI, my friend who did IUI happened to tell me, as a same-sex couple, I'm sorry, IVF, as a same-sex couple, they won't pay for IUI unless you've tried to get pregnant with IUIs. And
So
you
they
have to
won't
pay.
pay, just to clarify, they won't they won't cover the IVF unless you try with IUI first for
Correct.
same-sex couples.
And
I
so if
think
you're
they do
paying
that with
for
some
both,
there's some plans that do that with hetero couples too. They feel like,
that is,
yeah,
yeah.
some where you have to do
Well,
a couple of
no.
rounds of IUI before you even do IVF. That's so
Yeah.
crazy that someone can control your body like that. It's like,
But
why
on
can't I just
top
make
of
that
that,
decision?
with hetero couples, you have to go in there and say, as a hetero couple, we have been trying, right, unsuccessfully for a year as a
Yes.
hetero couple, have not been
Yes.
able to get pregnant unsuccessfully. So then they're going to make you do IUIs. Maybe the doctor arbitrarily will just say 5 times.
Right.
Okay, so then you got to go in there 5 times. Well, guess what? For a single parent or a gay woman, I have to buy sperm 5 times or use 5 times if I know somebody. Sperm at one shot could
Yeah.
be $600 or
Yeah.
$1,000. So that every time I do that, that's going to cost me. So that's even though an IUI, and then the IUI cost of however cost that is at the doctor's office. So there's a cost right there. So that's a burden. And then the only reason I wanted to do IVF is that your chances are much greater because you have an embryo, and then they put it in, and then you hope for it. And then that's when I found out that they were just doing the single embryo transfers and stuff. So there were all these things to think about, and so it was so daunting. So my first experience in like exploring it was, is my body ready? Is my body capable? What is my am I able to have a baby? So there was just, as your listeners know, I mean, there's just all these like little steps along the way. And so some of my fears were, did I have the twins and did my body recuperate? Did everything go okay from that experience? And am I capable
Right.
of now having another child? And because, some women have their one child and then they're not able to, get pregnant again based on, certain things. So I did all of that and everything was kind of, coming along. But, so we tried and we ended up not using the same donor for the twins and finding different donors. So we went on like websites and banks and picked out this donor, and then we tried, and then we were just doing IUIs. But I will say the first time, and this is interesting tying back to the story about the same sex benefits and going into the doctor about kind of going around the corners, cutting corners. So the first doctor I went to go see was actually a friend who specializes in same-sex families. And when I went to him, I met with his like insurance person or financial person, and she basically gave me a cost sheet for an IUI. Now, most people know an IUI is just an insemination. It's not anything real terribly invasive.
Right.
And the total amount was like $6,000. And I was like, okay, but what about like insurance and all that? And they're like, well, because you're a same-sex couple, you're not able to get pregnant on your own. So you have to do this. And so insurance doesn't cover it.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, the chances of getting pregnant the first time on an IUI have got to be so slim. So you're saying every time I try one IUI, it's going to be $6,000 plus the cost of the sperm. I'm going to be like out. Like,
Yeah.
no, like I'm never going to have this child. Like this is not just, and I sat and bawled in this office thinking I'm never going to have this baby. I'm never going to have this child. That's it. This is it.
Especially, and just to be clear, it's not that you're not thankful for the twins. You wanted an opportunity though to be the biological mother of,
yeah.
this time.
I mean, I'm a mother, these are my babies. And so, the idea of, and they even understand how DNA works and, and they know they were in my belly, and their connection to me is they know that we have these conversations about my blood and that they have my blood because they were in my body, but they know that they were her eggs. So they have her, they have her genes, and it's a really cool story that they get. And then they also know the genes of Everett. So it's a very scientific discussion that we have about all of that, but it has nothing to do with, a
lack of love or a lack of
no. And also too, like sibling wise, like this is their brother.
Right.
There's no distinction between, because he came, and I think the connector, which I think is such a beautiful thing, not to pat myself on the back, but is me. Like I've connected these babies together through me. I've carried these 3 children, and therefore our brothers and sisters, they can't stand each other most of the time.
Just as just like a brother and sister dynamic would do. Yeah. Exactly.
Which all the more reason tells you that they're siblings. But no, so that was a really, so I wish I could be there. I wish, you know what I want to say? I would be there standing outside that same-sex fertility clinic for people who walk out of there going, I'm going to have to pay out of pocket, because I'm going to tell you, you don't, because it's unfortunate that we have to play by the rules as same-sex couples. So what I ended up doing, and then I spoke to a friend who also said, she got a phone call from insurance saying that they called and said, what are they going to do? Come into your home and like check on you and see, are you sleeping with a man? Are you sleeping with a woman? And so I just went to a new doctor, and I just went in as a single person instead. I just said, you know what? I went in, I said, I want to have a baby. I can't get pregnant on my own. And I just said, I didn't give any specifics. I just said, I can't get pregnant on my own. I've tried to get pregnant and I can't, and I'd like to get pregnant. And that's it. I didn't give him any background, because unfortunately the person before knew me and knew my partner and used all that, and it worked against me. And instead I just went to a new doctor instead. And instead he said, okay, well, and then here's, unfortunately, and no offense to the person I went to, insurance, the new person did a better job digging into my insurance, and I ended up having full coverage of IUIs.
No
So it really
way.
had nothing to do with it. It was the fact that my insurance covered IUIs as an office, it turned out to be.
As an office visit?
Literally an office visit. So I had a $30 copay every IUI. So it wasn't $6,000. It was $30.
No.
And it had nothing to do with whether I was gay or straight. Yeah. So so kudos to back and who did I end up with again? Columbia. So it was no, I'm sorry. I love Columbia, but no, it was Yale. So I ended up going to Yale fertility.
Some other Ivy League. But but the fact it's so mind-blowing that you would go from a doctor who specialized in assisted reproductive technology or whatever for same-sex couples, and then end up being told something totally different.
Yeah, because
so the moral of the story is you have to dig, and you have to be your own best advocate.
Keep going. Don't take no for an answer, because I don't want to say it's a racket. I just want to say there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of places to go.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting the answer that you want, and unfortunately, and I had a conversation with another gay woman who had children and paid the money. The problem is, if you have the money and you people are vulnerable and they want children, and so they're like, okay, here, take my money, I'll do it. I unfortunately don't have piles of money around me to just hand over. So I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep looking until I get the answer I want, because that's, and that's what I did.
How many rounds you did IUI, and how many times did you do that?
Let's see. We did. I know I went through 3 donors. So I did 2 donors. One ended up in a miscarriage. So I ended up one taking and got a heartbeat. And I feel like I did it's hard to remember now, maybe two times before. And then the third, maybe 2 times before. And then maybe the third time took. I just couldn't get over the fact that I was like paying the copay. It was like $30, and I just couldn't get over it. And I think the cool news is that we still had sperm left. Like, that was the good feeling, was like there was still a surplus. Like, we didn't run out. Like, there was still donor
options.
material left
Yeah.
so it wasn't like it was like this desperation and he was there. And the fact that but I will say that like the age that I was at, there was a moment of, and it was a conversation that we had a little bit, was is there a moment of like, are we sure, like should we wait, or and it was like, why? It was one of those questions, and I'll say this like to listeners, and this is only coming from fertility doctors. Why wait if you have to even question it? Why? Because they'll give you that little chart when you go into that office with like that little scale with that little like line that just dips and it just drops, right? Like after 35, and it just goes down. Like, why play with it? You know, it's like, I guess if you know that you're already thinking and you're already in that office and you're already considering it, because it's one of those things you don't get back. And I think a lot of gay women find themselves in this situation because we waited so long for marriage equality to happen, and everything got delayed. So we weren't thinking kids at the same time growing up the way that other straight people were. We weren't planning our weddings in the way that other straight people were, because we didn't fantasize. A lot of women didn't fantasize the way that others. It wasn't
possible. You didn't see a world where it would be possible.
Right. So it was a very kind of like last minute decision for some lesbians. And I know a lot of women that happened for. And, you know, some people came out later and like, so it was different, but like, but some women I know, like, you know, in their late 30s or early 40s who finally met somebody, ended up rushing to like fertility clinics to be like, okay, now I've met somebody and we want to start a family. And I get it. And some people got in, you know, and it happened for them. But that's how I felt. I was, you know, in that 38 age, you know, 39. And it was like, well, why consider a moment, another day of waiting when it could just, you know? And so, but it's so funny because, you know, the thought of feeling old or wondering if like I can manage, I guess I would always say like keep someone who's a little bit older than you around, because you always feel younger. You always feel like, well, I'm not that old, so I could
be that age, but I'm not. No, I'm just kidding. And kids they do keep us young. I mean, they really do. And you have 3 little, you know, souls that, and even with the age, you know, the dynamic, it's like you have these preteens and a toddler. Yeah. So it's like you have different phases to relate with them in their own way, which is really nice too. Yeah. Even though it wasn't planned, quote unquote, to have this gap, it looks like you are doing the best and enjoying the gaps that you have within your family.
It's, you know what, it's actually funny you say that, because maybe I sort of did, because I remember the day I was supposed to go, what was really fun was that the fertility clinic was like walking distance from the kids' elementary school, first of all, which was funny. It's like, this is just like perfect. I can go like do an IUI and drop the kids off at school. So the fertility clinic had said, you know, come in and do it. And I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do it this month. The kids are going to kindergarten. I said, I want to get them in, let them do it. I'm going to pause it and like let them have this. And I think I was thinking about waiting and I realized like they'll have gotten into kindergarten and then they'll have, so I think that gap was really interesting, because now I'm excited that the kids are going into middle school and starting kindergarten. So it's such, to me anyway, it's a really cool thing that I don't have to like cry over the fact that it's an end of an era, because now I get to like stay in the elementary school world for a whole nother, you know, 5 years. While they're now starting middle school, and I've loved this whole experience with the twins in elementary school, and then he'll now get to start that.
He'll have you, because they'll have you in different ways, and you know what I mean, because he's not an only child at all. You know, even though the gap is kind of wide, he still benefits from having two older siblings, but they have their own activities and things that they're into. And then he's got his own time with mama, you know?
Yep.
That's really nice.
And also, I did consider the fact, and I did always say this with them being, when the twins were 4, knowing that I did not want 3 kids in college at the same time. It's bad enough.
To have some time to recover, right?
It's bad enough we have 2 going at the same time. So I always said, no way were we going to have 3 kids in college at the same time. So at least give ourselves a break. So, but yeah.
What do you like most about being a mother? Is it everything you thought it would be?
I guess I like the most about being a mother that, back to what I said about being the only child, it's having a family, like having people in my life every day, like being with them and relating and having people that I'm like growing. I feel that I am growing up with them. Like we are growing up together, and I am becoming, like, as Michelle Obama writes, like becoming with them in an adult that I would never have become just on my own as an adult. And obviously they're becoming, you know, independent people, and I'm doing the best I can at help raising them. But I feel as though that that this family that we created is something that I guess I never thought I'd be a part of the growth. Like I just figured like I'd be this authority figure and I'd be going to my job and I'm doing the carpools and I'm shuffling them around and sending them to where they need to go. But I didn't realize like how much it would really, really impact me and sort of like how integral I would be to the process of parenting, and like how impactful it would be to my life. And so it impacts how I do my job, like what a better employee I am and how I do that, the choices I make.
I think what I love about being a parent is we're not even aware of the gems, what exactly that they're soaking in from us, you know, because I see little things in Carrie as a little performer. She loves music. I don't know if she'll ever do it, but it's nice to see little pockets of me and her dad throughout the day. And you have 3 little ones where you can spot little pieces of Sarah, little pieces of your partner, and just see who they become in the world.
It's true. And I think that, well, so then I will say that though, is that it's also the opposite in that I am astounded, and this is what I knew would happen, but it's a surprise, like it's a gift every day that you unwrap, where what they're showing you is just something beyond, like it's them. It's their own person. It's something that has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with their other parent. It's just them. And obviously environment and other things that they're getting out in the world and all, but like they came here with their own agenda and their own, like, you know, something from the spirit world. Who the heck knows where it came from, or their whole like mix up of DNA and everything. But they're just personalities and stuff, and you just kind of have to just sit back and go, wow, who are you? Like, who is this person?
And I can't wait to meet you and who you're going to be.
Yes, that's what it is. And it's so cool. These just characters that you're raising and that you've been just given. Like someone trusted you, just bestowed you with these just beings, and you just hope you do right by them. But it's pretty awesome. Like I said, I mean, this is what I always wanted, and this is like, it's just a nice little bow on top, cherry on top, whatever it is. And, you know, and I do have the best co-parent. I chose her, she chose me, and we chose these kids. And so, and, you know, we love them to pieces.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to sit with us today, opening your home to us and sharing your experiences. We really, really appreciate it. In present day, her family represents many just like hers who find themselves being interrogated, harassed, devalued, and erased by certain legislation around our country. It was important to me to bring you her story, to inspire those in our LGBTQ plus community looking to be parents, to strengthen the spirit of those who currently are, and to allow those who may have never had a chance to meet someone like Sarah or her family to tear down the walls of maybe fear, judgment, or just innocent ignorance, to sit with us, listen, and hopefully walk away learning something new. Thank you for listening today, and please don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at NewMommyAt40. And I can't wait to sit with you next Monday for our next episode. Take care of yourselves and each other.